This is a 3D printed cat. This is a 3D printed jet engine model. This is a 3D printed toy car. And this is a 3D printed remote holder. But can you 3D print a surfboard? How's it going, people? So, time for another surfboard build. Actually got a couple surfboard builds coming up, but specifically this one's gonna be slightly different. I have in this box right here a whole bunch of 3D printed parts. And these are going to be the beginning of hopefully a surfboard. Each one of these are printed at a thickness of 0.75 of a millimeter. Some of them had to go a little thicker just so they can maintain structure. A 3D printed surfboard is not something new. There's a few people that have done it. If you do a search out there on the internet, there are some people that have done this, but their way of doing it is slightly different, where they print it like a honeycomb structure and then laminated fiberglass over it. My idea is not to do that because I wanted to be, well, number one, I didn't want to repeat what someone else did, and number two, I thought it'd be cool to be able to color the surfboard using the actual filament color. So this is printed from just regular old PLA. Just a little bit of background of how I started this. I created the surfboard design in, I forget the name of the 3D program, but I'll put it right here. It's specifically for making surfboards for CNC machines. I exported out the 3D model into an STL file, imported into Mesh Mixer, which by the way is a freaking buggy program. But I cut the model apart in Mesh Mixer, added in alignment holes all the way around each part. I hollowed it out, exported out each part individually, and I have a spreadsheet keeping track of every single piece that I've printed, the date I printed it, and I also weighed how much it printed. There were a few challenges when making this. Number one, I couldn't make the parts too thick, because if I made them thick, obviously I'm gonna have a lot of weight, and I don't want this to weigh too much. I want this board actually to be light if possible. The problem though, is when you make the wall thickness, when you hollow out each piece, if you make them too hollow, what ends up happening is then this can have a tendency to bow in and warp when it's printing, depending on how big the surface is and the orientation of the print, all that great stuff. So 3D printing, if any of you guys do any of that, you'll probably know exactly what I'm talking about. I won't get into that. I just want to see if I can do this and just share my experience of see if I can print this. If this works, I'm going to share all my files out on Thingiverse. So anyone else who wants to attempt this really dumb idea to go give it a try. All right, let's just start gluing it together. That's what I'm going to do right now, because I printed out half of the board in this container here. But the problem is I'm not sure if this is going to work properly. I've done a test to see on just one segment, to see if it's possible. One second. This guy right here. And indeed, I can do it. I printed it out just in different colors just for fun. This is super strong, super durable, but I printed this at, I believe, 1.25 thickness, but it's also quite heavy, which not ideal. So I thinned it down to 0.75, but this holds, if you look, holds the structure really, really well. See, the cross section. So it's definitely possible. You could totally print this out just for display if you wanted to just hang it up on a wall. One last thing, I glued each one of these segments together with different types of glue just as a test. Some of it was done with epoxy, some was done with model cement. I mean, this one's model cement. It all holds. It's fairly strong, but the glue that's the lightest and works the best is one that actually melts the PLA and glues it together, but it's also the most toxic. Weld on 16, this stuff here. This stuff works awesome. It's really smelly, but yeah. Okay, let's start putting this together. I don't want this video to be too long. I am gonna glass the board once I'm done. I'm gonna, because I printed it at 0.75 of a millimeter, it is fairly flimsy. The fiberglass is then going to strengthen the whole board. So this board should totally be rideable. Should be kind of interesting project. Total print time for all 95 pieces was 218 hours or over 9 full days of printing, but that's not counting all the test prints as well. A lot of alignment pins were printed, and also a set of surfboard fins. These will be glassed on the board in another video. I also experimented to see if I could print with different amounts of infill to give this a little bit less flex, but unfortunately any thicker than this, then the infill would be way too heavy. The board would just get like, it would be a brick. Also, trying to vent all of these little pockets would be very hard because you can't have just air spaces that are sealed up, or else you're going to get when the board heats up and cools, the air that's trapped inside each one of these cells don't have any place to go, and that's not good. Also, that's just one box of all the failed prints and test prints that I've had. Different nozzle sizes. Some came out really great. Other ones didn't come out so great. So this is the graveyard of 3D printing. And this is only just one box. I actually had a few more, so a very, very iterative process. So between each piece, I have these pins printed out, and they're hollow. And the reason why they're hollow is so that I can insert it in here, and then I can take a drill and then drill a hole between each piece. So each piece is interconnected, and then I'll just have one vent to vent it. Once I start gluing the pieces together, I find the best thing to use to hold it together is just to use some duct tape, specifically Gorilla Tape or gaff tape, because the adhesive is easily removed, but it's very strong. On the bottom of the board, I modeled in 2 holes, one for the leash plug and one for the vent plug, and then it has a hole that connects to the rest of the board, which that way you can vent the whole surfboard with one vent. Last piece. The dimensions of the surfboard are 6 foot 4 inches long by 20 inches wide by 2 5/8 inches thick. Well, I got too many projects on the go, so I gotta retire this one temporarily while I work on the 3D printed surfboard. It's beautiful. Very, very happy with this. I can't believe how well this came out. It actually is holding together. It looks like a surfboard. It's pretty freaking cool. Alright, the 3D printed surfboard is assembled. It looks pretty darn cool. I'm very happy with it. And I also did, earlier at the beginning of the process, I did a scale model print of this said surfboard with the same STL file just to see what it would look like. Pretty cool to be able to prototype and model something all at home using CAD software and your own 3D printer. All right, next step, we're going to fiberglass the surfboard. So that means draping fiberglass over it, putting epoxy or polyester resin, and laminating the board so it can be ridden. Now, a couple little things I want to mention. The board does have some divots and soft spots because I had to print this at 0.75 of a millimeter for the skin. All the pieces will provide lots of strength, compressive strength for when I'm jumping on the board. I think when I'm popping up and landing on the board, it should be okay. But some of these spots might be a little weak, and I might get some delaminations on that. Can't really help that without printing this a different way or engineering this a different way. This has been so long, such a long process already. I think I'm just gonna glass this. And then I might do version 2 because I already have some ideas on how to improve upon this. Anyways, so I did some testing, and I laminated with fiberglass and epoxy some test pieces that I had left over just to see how strong it would be. It seems like it'll hold up just fine. One little issue, as you notice, this board is very glossy. And what does glossy mean? Well, it means it's probably slippery, which means that it's probably not the best for adhesion with glue. Incidentally, I also did a video on what's the glue for PLA related to this, so you can go check that out on my channel. So the epoxy will have a tendency possibly to delaminate from this, or the fiberglass and epoxy, because it's a little bit slippery. You know, there's not a lot of surface area for it to grab onto. It's not a chemical bond, it's more of a physical bond, so there might be some issues there. But I think overall it should be okay from all the testing I've done. I'll mention one other thing. The reason why I printed this at 0.75 of a millimeter for the skin is after all the testing I did, if I printed it any thicker than that, it would add way too much weight. And this is already weighing about 7 pounds. By the time I add fiberglass and epoxy, it's gonna make the board a little heavy. I'm trying to make this board, keep it light as possible. You know, there's that fine balance between weight versus durability. So, gotta play that line. Again, some engineers out there or people who are better at CAD could probably do a better job at this than me. In fact, I'm sure there are people that could do a much better job than me. But hey, why am I doing this? Why does anyone post silly videos on the internet? Just to see what happens and what you can do. So we'll see what happens. I'm working on another video showing how I fiberglass this surfboard. So that's coming in the future. This surfboard is finished, but due to the shelter in place and the local beaches being closed because of the current state of the world, I haven't been able to take it out for a test ride yet. More to come on this surfboard later this year when I get it out for a surf. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and hit the bell icon. I'll see you guys in the next video.